Thank you, Professor Maltezu, for this enlightening information. One more to be added for Faros. And our next speaker is Dr. Shakir Musa to tell us about Egyptian and Egyptiot literature.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Καλώς ήλθατε.
Ευχαριστώ. Δύο εκφράσεις μόνο. Ευχαριστώ τον κύριο Πρόεδρο. Ευχαριστώ όλους εσάς. Ευχαριστώ και την Οργανωτική Επιτροπή που καταβάλει πραγματικά μεγάλη προσπάθεια για την επιτυχία του μεγάλου αυτού συνεδρίου. And now, the Egyptian Greek Egyptiot writers, which are the literary production of the Arabs, of the Arab literatures, with whom they coexisted on daily basis. Panos Patrikios, who was an Alexandrian Egyptiot, in his article entitled From the Egyptian Literature, Poetry and Poetess of Egypt, published in Faros periodical, refers to the Egyptian poetry and its flowing production. This researcher seems to have known the course and the evolution of the Egyptian poetry. He believes that the Turkish Sheikh is responsible for the spiritual decline of the country. He means Egypt. In the same article, he gives us some great names of writers and poets Egyptian, such as Hafiz Ibrahim, Aisha Taymuriya, Ahmad Shawki, and others. Ahmad Shawki is of particular importance and interested, and rightly, he was a great poetic genius. He said, Patrikios, he has perceived in his soul the light and the beautiful glimpses of the ancient Greek spirit, that the beautiful glimpses of the ancient Greek spirit give him, and that is why his poetry exudes archaism or archaismos, and sometimes one thinks that his voice comes out of the depths of the century rather than the cosmopolitan society. Indeed, one can see the ancient Greeks as well as the modern one in the poetic of Ahmad Shawki. But we should say that Ahmad Shawki was supporter for the ancient Greece, not for the modern one, because he was a supporter for the Ottoman Empire, and you can see this in his poet. We say that Shawki was one of the Arab poets who expressed his admiration for the Alexander the Great, and now you can see it in this. Can you change? Yeah, this. Elizabeth Ifsara was Alexander writer and poet who did not know Arabic language, as she confessed herself. She was, however, interested in the Arabic literature, mainly poetry, ancient and modern. She tried to work on the depth of on the traditional Egyptian songs. She herself commented on the poetic production of the Arabs, she emphasizing that the Arabs has a great and rich literary production that deserves our admiration. But we have such a problem that some of the Egyptiotes or Egyptiotes they told us about the situation or the attitude of Quran against the poetry. Several then Alexandrian Egyptiot scholars commented on the attitude of Islam towards poetry. Many felt that Islam affected poetry in a negative way. This negative attitude of Islamic religion made the Arabs focalize or focused on or focus their interest on Quran thus abandoning poetry because they had to devote themselves in their religion and their sacred book. They mean Quran. But actually, the Arabs in the Middle Age, they started to translate the Greek spiritual heritage. I mean here by the Greek heritage, I mean philosophy, astronomy, and but not poetry. I think the Arabs, they didn't like to translate poetry because, as Al-Jah has said, excuse me now. The Arabs believed that they possessed the poetic genius and the ability of expression and did not have any need to know literature of others, of other people. Second, the Greek poetry, either epic or lyric, is based on pagan heritage, which is in direct contrast with the monotheistic religion of Muslim. But the situation is it's something else for the modern Arabs. I mean, Ahmad Shawq and others. They actually interested to know the Iliad. And it was the wish of Qaddafi. Qaddafi, he was interested to translate some Arabic literary because they wanted to know the Arabs. But our problem is the Arabs. They was known Greek literature or no? I think they was informed well about the Greek literature. And that you can see this, and please. Can you? This is what they say about Homerus, and this is from the Middle Age. And this is how the Arabs imagine Homerus by Middle Age. That means that they actually informed about Homerus and informed about the Aeschylus. And Ibn Abi Usayba actually in his book Ayn al-Atabba, he told us that most of the Arabs, they knew Homerus well, but they didn't like actually to translate it because it was against the religion or the monotheistic religion of Islam. What I want to say in conclusion, because I don't feel well today, I'm so sorry for that, that also many Egyptiotes or Egyptiotes showed a great interest in the ancient Arab literary production. They were also interested to the modern literature that they got known through translation. On the other hand, the Arabs were focused on the ancient Greek culture. The translation of the Greek literary text started in the 19th, as Taha Hussein started, because you know, I think most of you know Taha Hussein, that he established ancient Greek department, I think 1925, and he wished actually from Greece to do the same to establish an Arabic department in University of Athens. But this wishes doesn't happen till now. We hope in the future. The translation of the Greek literary text started by the 19th century. Before that, in the Middle Age, they focused on the translation of scientific text and philosophy for religious purpose. We have this, like for Al-Mu'tazila, it was, how can I say it, religious, not heresy, but it was like a thinker people. They was in need for the Greek philosophy to support their ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. So we can get some questions. I have my first, Dr. Musa, to start from you. I read that it was Omirush written in Arabic. It is not Omar.
No.
Oh.
I think that the Arabs, and I speak with my professor, Aris, he is there, and I thank him for his coming. I think that the Arabs, they don't trust the Arabic Quran.
Oh,
μπορώ να μιλήσω στα ελληνικά και αν θέλει να μας βοηθήσει. Okay. Εγώ νομίζω προσωπικά ότι οι Άραβες γνώριζαν τον Όμηρο ως Όμερος, μη αναγνωρίζοντας την ερασμική προφορά. Αυτό σημαίνει και βρίσκουμε επίσης όλα τα ονόματα των αρχαίων Ελλήνων λογοτεχνών, όπως είναι ο Αισχύλος γράφεται Αισχύλος, όπως είναι. Ευρυπίδες το γράφουν Ευρυπίδες. Και αυτό έχει γίνει στο βιβλίο του Αιών Ρατεμπά και στον Χάσαν Αλ-Αθήρ, Al-Mathal Al-Sa'ir και άλλα βιβλία. Πιστεύω ότι οι Άραβες γράφοντας Όμηρος, επειδή το σίγμα βρίσκεται ανάμεσα στο σ το αραβικό και το σ το ελληνικό. Άρα ακούγεται σαν σ. Άρα λέει το λένε Όμηρος και όχι Όμηρος. Ευχαριστώ.
Have you finished in Azhar the translation of this extremely interesting literature that you have started some years ago?
I myself started to translate now and I hope to finish it by this year. I started Solomos and I finished last year, excuse me because I felt tired, I finished translating Yatem Batrida. And now we started to translate all, to build again Bayt al-Hikmah that we had in Baghdad, but by Egyptian way or Azhar way.
I was referring to the Azhar way of the Arabic sources, that there was a program many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, that started.
We started it. We started to translate the sources. And I myself, I care a lot about the image of the Greeks. Now, this is my book. I didn't finish it till now. The image of the Greeks in the Arabic literature.
Because you know, there is a lack of information from most of the Arab travelers, poets, and all that. And it is a pity that all that culture is hidden and not accessible to the international community.
No, it's some of, I think some of German.
Very few, maybe 10% have been translated into English and French and German.
Yes.
But the rest, it's maybe 80%.
For example,
it's unknown to us. We eager to see Azhar, the most ancient
Υπάρχει τώρα μια κίνηση, για παράδειγμα ένας συνάδελφός μου καταγράφει την ιστορία του Μεγάλου Αλεξάνδρου, γιατί υπάρχουν 7 γραμμένες ιστορίες. Κάποιοι τον μπερδεύουν μάλιστα με τον Αλέξανδρο το γνωστό που αναφέρεται στο Κοράνι. Αλλά αυτή η κίνηση ξεκίνησε πριν 2 χρόνια. Κάποιοι μαζεύουν που αναφέρονται ακριβώς οι Έλληνες μέσα στις πηγές, ας πούμε, τις αραβικές, όπως είναι ο Όμηρος, ο Αλέξανδρος και οι άλλοι. Κοιτάμε όμως τη λίγα τεχνική πλευρά, γιατί υπάρχει και η επιστημονική καθαρά πλευρά. Μας ενδιαφέρει αυτό.
Ο Δούλαλ Καρνάιν του Κορανίου είναι ο Μέγας Αλέξανδρος.
Ναι, Δούλαλ Καρνάιν.
Οκ. Ερωτήσεις, παρακαλώ.
Mr. Chairman, we would like to ask you permission to show again to the public the very nice documentary of Mr. Paolo Vitti, because nobody has seen it.
Yes, of course. But let's first
After, at the end.
finish with the questions. Yes, let's first finish with the questions, please.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and eminent speakers here. My name is Alexis Manthiakis. I represent the International Parthenon Sculptures Action Committee, which is based in New Zealand, and we have offices in Greece. We have been active since 2009 as an activist organization with 240,000 supporters around the world. And so I will just take 1 minute of your time to say some things, to ask, basically. We have found in these years that the solution, as Professor Milanopoulos said, is only at this point, it can only be a legal solution because the law of 1963 in Britain, the museum's law does not allow the British Museum, which is only custodians. They have no legal right to return the Parthenon sculptures. So this must be a legal decision by two countries. One is Britain, which must have a law to return the sculptures, and one must be Greece, which must have a law to receive the sculptures and to ask for them. And only there's a bridge there, can these be returned. After all these years, our position, I've spoken at Oxford Union in November last year, we won the debate there. We have won, all of us, the public opinion of Britain is for us. We have the legal question, and this is something that must be changed. So in Britain, we have had negative responses from from all the people we've written to, Mrs. May, Mr. Johnson, and the previous people. In Greece, we have not had a request, an official request by the government for more than 40 years, or Parliament, unlike Australian parliaments, the EU in 1999, to request them. Greece, the British told me, have not asked the British government, who are the ones who will legislate, to return the Parthenon marbles, to change the law. That is one question. So this is one of the objects that we have to address. Greece must ask for them officially. Britain must change the law. Yes, current law, Professor Michalounopoulos opened a very important window for the return. Current law in Britain, as we know, does not allow the return. But Britain is a country that when I was living in England, if you were a homosexual, they put you in jail. The law changed. Now you're free. They used to sell people in Britain with papers and invoices. This was legal. They sold opium. They did the opium wars. The British will change the law if the time is right. And they must be pressured. Anyone, the basic thing, and I will conclude with this, sorry, it's a long question, but the basic thing with Britain, we must know how they function politically on a legal question of acquired items. They gave back India only because of the strikes. They gave back Cyprus, Kenya, and other countries because the countries there, the leaders, shed blood. So unless Britain is pressured, we will not get the marbles back. And at the moment, it is our opinion we will not get the Parthenon marbles back. This is very depressing for us, except for the aprosmeno gegonos, the unknown event. And there was one just 6 months ago called Brexit, because Brexit, for the first time, allowed Greece to say whether they would approve Brexit or not, our parliament. I put this question to Deutsche Welle. It was picked up in international media. We were attacked. I was personally attacked by the Daily Mail and the Express because we were εκβιάζαμε την Αγγλία. The response from the ministry here was they're not interested in Brexit. This is not something they want to be at all involved with. This is the only chance we had in 200 years to get the marbles back, because it depends on us to ratify Brexit. Unfortunately, at a recent meeting of an international group just 2 weeks ago, I think Professor Goddard was there, all the head of the ministry and the head of the government said very specifically, Brexit is not on the cards. And I would like to close with that, to ask Professor Michalounopoulos and the panel, do you think there is a chance that you, with your influence as important academics, with the power that we do not have, I'm just one citizen among millions, can we bring this up now before we sign Brexit? Because the Brexit deal is done, but the ratification has not been done. Thank you for listening to a very long question, but we think that this is the last chance we will ever have to get the Parthenon marbles back. Otherwise, forget it. Thank you for your time and your anochi.
Well, your intervention was very interesting. First of all, I want to clarify that my position is purely under the concept of the law, and it is not political. Second, I did not try to argue for for the repatriation of the marbles, but I just wanted to point out that the possession of the marbles is nowadays immoral, and I wanted to weaken the position of the English side, because under 2 points of view, namely the commission by omission and the violation of the Proceeds of Crime Act, it is very doubtful whether the mere position is lawful under the current English law. But nevertheless, there is a movement in the whole world nowadays for the repatriation of stolen objects of cultural heritage. And there is in the United States, there is the so-called McLean and Schultz doctrine, according to which the English courts declare, the American courts declare as stolen objects all objects of all antiquities which other countries have declared as members, as objects of their cultural heritage. Under this point of view, many countries who have antiquities, such as Mexico, Guatemala, Egypt, China, no, not China, but also other countries have promulgated laws declaring that objects of cultural heritage belong to them. And according to the McLean and Schultz doctrine, the American courts order the repatriation of these artifacts. And in contradiction to the 20th century, since the beginning of the 21st century, many objects have been repatriated. And for example, China has taken back many artifacts, and also Egypt and other countries. I think that the whole environment is positive now. And in any case, the dismembering of the Parthenon marbles is totally different from the theft of an entire sculpture. The return of the repatriation of the Parthenon marbles does not mean that all the museums of the Western world will be empty, will be deprived of the ancient sculptures. Thank you.
Mrs. Papathanasiou wants to add something.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Mr. Mathiakis, dear Alexis, thank you very much for the question. Following what is being said by Professor Milonopoulos, I would also like to add that the return of the Parthenon sculptures is an issue which should be focused mainly on the reunification of parts of the monument which are aside with the rest of the monument. And in these terms, we are talking about the integrity, the reunification of the sculptures. As to the issues that you have raised at the political level, let's say, and as being here the only representative of an officer coming from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a member of the Hellenic Committee for the return of the reunification of the Parthenon sculptures, I would like to tell you that as to your first point that Greece should go to and ask Great Britain to change their national law. okay, it could be done as a suggestion, but in political terms, you cannot go and ask a foreign state to change in national legislation first. And second, as to the Brexit, argue, okay, even if I would agree with you in legal terms, the issue of putting the Brexit on the table as a prerequisite for the return of the Parthenon sculptures and the exit of UK from the European Union, I'm afraid it's a strictly political issue, and if the political will, let's say, at the moment, is not to use Brexit, I'm afraid that maybe we lost the train, I don't know. So this is the issue. And
Thank you,
my
Dr.
answer.
Papanasiou. Let me speak without being political, without belonging to any committee that takes political decisions, sir. You know, the Parthenon marbles, they are the only ancient culture items that have changed their name. They are called the Elgin marbles. They were constructed by Phidias, one of the most famous sculptors of all times. And when I suggested to the Royal Society there, we were having a cocktail next to Phidias, well, okay about the cocktail, but they should change the title at the entrance. I got a smile. You know what was that smile? We can legislate for a man to become a woman, as you said, or a woman to become a man, but these things are unacceptable to us. You gave us an example, India. India had Mahatma Gandhi. We don't, sir. I'm sorry, we don't. And this is our request. This is actually the request, I'm sure, of all colleagues and scholars in this room. It's a pity that we cannot ask for something that belongs to a building. It is not just an art, a piece of art that has been taken. It's part of a building. Either they have to take the Parthenon with the rock, the Holy Rock. I suggest to have it in the Trafalgar Square next to the obelisk to remind of old cultures, or to return the marbles. They belong to the Parthenon. They don't belong to the British Museum. I'm sorry, it's an international audience, but this is the truth. I have spoken these words also to the Royal Society and friends there, but I got no answer. Thank you.
Englishman here, say how much I support the return of the marbles, and I have been active in the past trying to get something done. I first launched into it with the death of Marina Mercuri, which some of you will remember as a tremendous icon for the British. And I went about it first with the British Museum, where I had some good contacts because I've been telling the Greek and Roman department of the British Museum this and that about ancient ships. And we produced a letter to the Times saying that we should return these marbles and touch our caps to the pleasure that Marina Mercuri gave us. Well, that got somewhere. We had quite a lot of support, and indeed some came back to us from Greece, but not enough to do anything effective. So next, I wrote to the Times. This is a great thing that British people do if they want to get something popular, at the millennium. And I suggested that we should do it in honor of the millennium. reminding ourselves of far more than 2,000 years of Greek culture and Greek civilized influence on the world in general. I must stop now because it's already late, but I would say, with all deference to the law and to learned lawyers who have talked about it, that it really is a case on both sides of a beau geste. People, it's no good trying to go about it legally because it puts up the backs of the British Museum and the British government when everybody talks about criminal conspiracies to keep them, which may indeed be true, but I suggest that the beau geste from the Greek side should be to deliberately mute their criticism of Britain and the British Museum and Elgin and try to make a softer approach to that, and that otherwise to try and nail the museum and the British government as criminal conspirators is only going to put their backs up.
Thank you, sir. You are a real Briton gentleman. Thank you. So, Paolo, your turn.
Returning to Alexandria, I'm sorry for that. No, just I wanted to thank you, Professor Maltesu, for her very nice speech with bringing evidence of the iconography in Venice of the lighthouse in Alexandria. And I was particularly, I'm particularly interested to the relief of Alexander, because we have evidence of this kind of iconography in medieval Italy, in Otranto, for instance, and also in Rome. There is the Museum of Alto Medioevo. There is a similar relief with the depicting the apotheosis of Alexander the Great, which is meant, at least in Italy in the medieval time, as a negative, is showing the negative part of the human being wanted to be more than he can. So he is the person who makes something that, under the point of view of medieval Italy, was not the right way to do. So I would like to ask you, do we know exactly when the relief in the left side of San Marco was placed over there? Because this could be interesting to understand the approach they had exactly in placing that slab. Also, it is interesting because the side facade is quite free of any decoration, so it's very strong, the evidence of this plaque. Thank you very much. They were placed in yes.
I assume, no, after the Fourth Crusade, and precisely after 1261, and not after 1204, after 1261, after the recovery of the Byzantine Empire by Michael Palaiologos. This is the date, the key date of all the transfers from Constantinople to Venice.
So it was
because
quite...
leaving the Venetians from Constantinople, they transport all the relics in Venice.
Yes, as all
so
the others.
I assume that there was.
Well, the significance, the medieval significance it had in Italy was lost by the time. I mean that it was different. Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Dr. Awad.
Yes. My first question is to Mrs. Maltese. The relics of St. Mark were not the only relics that were moved from Alexandria. There was a Santa Elvia who went to Greece, to Hydra, and from Greece they took the relics to Spain. I'm not very sure about the story, but apparently there were other relics that were removed from Alexandria, probably around the same period of the Arab conquest and later on. including these two examples, these two flagrant or known examples. My other question is going to be to our Egyptian colleague here. You mentioned Shaw'i in his poetry. Obviously, Shaw'i was our prince of poetry. He is very much in favor of Alexander the Great, and he speaks very highly of Alexander the Great and his achievements, but he's very cynical of Cleopatra. He talks about Actium as being, you know, a major defeat for Egypt, for the Egyptian queen, and that she comes back with her fleet after being defeated in the night, etc. So there are quite controversial, you know, opinions about this period and how the modern Egyptians look at this kind of thing. But you have modern writers like Ibrahim al-Magid, who is very Alexandrian and writes very positively about. Another very important thing is that the creation of the two departments of classics in Cairo University first by Ahmed Lutfi Said and also by Taha Hussein, and then Taha Hussein becomes the dean of Alexandria University and establishes also a department of classics, Greco-Roman, in Alexandria as well. Now, my question is going to be as far as the Azhar is concerned today. What is the position of the Azhar in terms of classical studies and interpretations and sorry, in terms of classical studies, and how does that affect or reflect on the curriculums of the Azhar University today? Oh, thank you.
I didn't understand very well the question, but all we know about the story of the translation derive from the Western sources. We know nothing from the Arabic sources.
No, there are no Arabic sources. There are Western sources. I
Perhaps
agree
there
with
are
you.
the travelers.
The travelers.
The
But
travelers,
Santa
but,
Elvia is
we do
another very interesting story because, again, she's a woman, she's a saint, she's taken from Alexandria, gone to Idra, and from Idra she went to the
I
south
don't
of
know
Spain.
from
I don't know
Alexandria,
much
Idra,
about the
Idra.
story. I thought maybe you...
Excuse me, Alexandria was plenty with saints. So
Yes.
let's go to the other question, please.
Speaking about Ahmad Shawqi, I was speaking. Ahmad Shawqi has a classical education. When he spoke about ancient Greece, we have another Ahmad Shawqi that he is speak about Greece that has education about Alexander, about Homer, but Ahmad Shawqi has a negative Stasi, how can I call it? Stasi? Position against modern Greece because he was supported of Ottoman Empire. He and I think Ahmad Muharram in his diwan called As-Siyasat, second diwan, Seleucid in Greek. If you are now, if it's allowed to me to speak about Al-Azhar, yes, we started in Faculty of Language and Translation as classical department, but we changed it to modern Greek. I can say that I myself was the first one who finished his master's degree and the PhD in modern Greek literature. And now we are trying to see, because we are the only department for modern Greek language in all Egypt. Now our colleagues in Cairo University, they established department. I think one of our colleagues, she will go to teach there is Konstantina. Here she's sitting there. But in Al-Azhar, we care about the modern Greece. We care. We want to know what's going on. It's okay. We have more than 6 or 7, I think, departments in all Egypt only for classical studies. We wanted to know the modern Greek literature, modern Greek history. It's our line in Al-Azhar, and we supported it, this line, and we hope to do something in this field. I hope that I answered you.
on what you said about Cleopatra. You know, history is written by the winner, and the winner was Augustus Caesar. He presented Cleopatra as a whore, not as a great queen. He destroyed all statues. That's why there are only, I think, 6 or 7 statues left, of which only one is intact. The others are all traumatized. So Cleopatra was the only queen not to follow Augustus, not to become his Laphyron, and not to accept becoming attaché to someone who she considered as the conqueror. I'm saying that because Augustus Caesar, he has, immediately after the assassination of Cleopatra, he has started destroying her myth. And he has forbidden speaking Greek. Ovidius, who wrote the Metamorphoses, he was expelled to Crimea because he has used mythological themes. And when Augustus was accused by Cicero about that, he was ready to send also Cicero, but he couldn't. He was a senator. So history is rough. And if you read what Vitruvius, that has been quoted here maybe 100 times in that meeting, he's apologizing in his prologue to Augustus Caesar that although he is addressing to his all holiness emperor, the mightiest of all who won, he apologizes for using a few Greek words because they are technical words and he couldn't use Latin. This is the reality, and this was the destruction, or the first destruction, of the Greek language and the continuation of the Alexandrian light that we discussed here, unfortunately. But as I said, history is written by the winners. Augustus Caesar was the winner. Cleopatra lost. Egypt lost the opportunity of its independence from the Romans. And this was the end of a glorious era. So going back, if there are no other comments, I would like to make a brief summary, and then we can see a video as requested. I would like first to thank all members of the organizing committee. You have all been wonderful, and I thank you by heart, on behalf also of the foundations and the Museum of Acropolis that has been so kind to host us and to provide us with such beautiful sentiments from the past. Second, I want to thank the speakers because I know that we are all busy. You are all famous, more than busy, and I have to express to you, on behalf of the organizing committee, our sincere thanks. Be sure that the organizing committee is taking steps for our next meeting, which we plan to have it in 2 years from now in Skanderia, and also that we plan to have a decent and to your expectations and level volume with the proceedings peer-reviewed in the same way that Archimedes started the reviewing process with Euclid, Eratosthenes, and all these famous people. And I wish to thank all who came from abroad, that you have spared time to be with us and share our thoughts on important issues that are simply the very, very beginning. It's the faintest light for something to come to revive not only memories from Alexandria, but to arrive at creating the museum as well as the pharos, when we will find out finally what was the mechanism, what was the marvel that has been lost. Thank you very much. Video by Dr. Paolo Vitti.
I wrote it. The artist is Paolo Bresciani.
Paolo Dresciardi. Great. Is he from Rome also?
He was from Naples.
From Naples.
Yeah, unfortunately he died some years ago, but this was his
So Napoletanic soul.
Napoletani, yes.
I like that. Thank you, Paolo, for...
I thank you. It was fantastic.
Grazie. Can I ask you, first wish you happy journey back home, but can I ask you all to applaud our secretaries? They have done a wonderful work. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Madame comes first, but... Sorry for that.
This is what I wanted to say just before uploading, because I wanted to give Alexandria, the Alexandrians, not by nationality, I don't mean Egyptians, but I mean those who are involved in Alexandrian studies or living in Alexandria or working on Alexandria. We have people who came from Oxford, we have people who came from Germany, people who came from France, and the others came from Alexandria, even if not Egyptians. So on behalf of all Alexandrians, I want to extend our thanks to the organizing committee and to the people who were always very alert about facilitating everything for us during these very nice days. And
They are Alexandrians also.
yes, they must become Alexandrians.
We are all.
It's not easy like that.
Like, ich bin eine Berliner, you know, it's...
So I want a second upload for them, please. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fonda, it's your turn.
On behalf of the participants to the organizers, very many thanks, especially to Professor Zerefos, and of course all the institutions that have supported the Canaginians, the museum, and of course everyone that has contributed in all possible ways, Christos.